Hey y'all, I'm Carolina Tony, coming to you today from the H.L. Hunley Museum in Charleston, South Carolina. Right here is a movie prop that was used in the movie H.L. Hunley. This particular prop is 10% larger than the actual Hunley. Today we are actually going to look at the actual Hunley, learn a little bit about the history, but right after this station identification. Hunley actually got the credit for designing and building the Hunley submarine, but he went into business with a steam gauge manufacturing business called McClintock and Watson. So with that company and Hunley, that's what they came up with. After the Hunley, it'd be approximately 50 years later before the next submarine stuck a ship, and that was a German U-boat. As you go in to visit the Hunley itself, there's pictures of artifacts that they had found on the boat itself. And pictures of where they actually brought it up and doing conservation work on it. And there's a picture of it in the tank. This is one of the slings that was used to raise the Hunley. You see how it fit up under, and it was inflated and hooked to a crane to be raised to the surface. And here is a picture of how it actually happened. They brought in a floating barge that was secured to the ocean floor and used this humongous crane to raise it. Here's the cage that it was raised by, and some video footage of right after it was raised, and they're bringing it here to the old naval base to be restored. Now this is a life-size digital picture of the submarine. They had 8 sailors on it, including Commander Dixon. Now this was one of the first submarines, so it did not take air with it, and the only air that was in the submarine was the air that was in it before it was submerged. Now, one of the things that they found out is all the sailors were basically in place where they would have sat in the submarine when it was raised, which brings up a lot of questions. How did they die? Why were they not at the towers trying to escape? Because there was no evidence of any type of them making an attempt to escape. So it is thought that they basically ran out of air and they died from asphyxiation. So they just kind of went to sleep right where they sat. This is called a keel ballast plate. This was actually connected to the bottom of the sub, like right there, and down on the end. You can see where they are there. This weighs about 500 pounds, and it was actually designed so that if the Hunley sat on the bottom, it would set level rather than rolling over. And it was also engineered so that they could turn pins and release the ballast, allowing the sub to float back to the top. Just turning a key, and then the sub would float to the surface. But there is no indication that the sailors made any attempt to do that. You can see this is where one would have been, and the other, there were 3 that were actually designed to take the weight off the sub so that it would rise. Here is a diagram of the Housatonic and the H.L. Hunley, so you can get an idea of exactly the difference in size. Where the Hunley was 40 feet long, the Housatonic was 207 foot long, and the Hunley carried 8 crew members, where the Housatonic had 160. The USS Housatonic and a drawing of the Hunley in comparison to the size where it actually hit. This is the tank that the Hunley is in.
Sodium hydroxide that has helped with the concretion. Concretion is nothing more than, you can think of it as an artificial reef. We'll talk about that when we get down.
Okay.
Downstairs, all right?
This is the H.L. Hunley. Was actually built in Mobile, Alabama, and transported by rail from Mobile to Charleston. Now, this thing had sunk more than once. There were several accidents and where other sailors had lost their lives during testing and all. But the last one, the sub stayed under the water for way over 100 years.
All right, folks. Harbor didn't leak too much. Unfortunately, just as they were getting the sea legs underneath it very well, Grant's western campaign and the blockade at New Orleans started to do everything. All right. Did I talk fast enough for y'all? Okay, good. We'll take one last look at the submarine, and then we will meet you all downstairs, over there by the... And those have proved to be quite difficult to run. So,
it was powered by their own hand, not heat.
Here's a photograph of what it looks like inside the tank. And here is a mapping of the crew and their bones in the bottom of the ship. Here's a diagram of the steps used in recreating what a person would look like. They would take a skull and put little pins on it to the depth of what skin would be. And you can see there where they would take clay and put over it and smooth it out. And look, during the test missions, the Hunley suffered 2 fatal sinkings that would claim the lives of over a dozen men. The first crew, Michael Kane, Nicholas Davis, Frank Doyle, Charles Hasker, Lieutenant John Payne, he actually survived. Absalom Williams, William Robinson, and John Kelly lost their lives. And then, if that wasn't enough, they tried it again. And Horace Hunley, the designer of the Hunley, he died. Robert Brookbank, Joseph Patterson, Charles Sprague, Thomas Park, Charles McCouch, Henry Baird, and John Marshall lost a second time. Well, hey, you know what they say? 3 strikes and you're out. On the 3rd attempt right here in Charleston Harbor, you went out. This was something I've never heard before. Was actually a quote by General P.G.T. Beauregard. He said it's more dangerous to those who use it than the enemy. From the bones that were discovered in the Hunley, the forensic scientists have been able to somewhat reconstruct what these sailors would have looked like. This is George Dixon and Arnold Becker and C. Lumpkin. I remember reading that you knew that he was an avid pipe smoker from the wear on his teeth. Frank Collins. And this is Corporal J.F. Carlson. And all they knew about this sailor, his name was Miller. Crewman Miller. Sailor James Wicks and Joseph Ridgway. And there was a legend that George Dixon was given a gold coin, and here it is. It's kind of hard to tell in this case, but it's bent. According to the legend, George Dixon knew a young lady named Queenie Bennett, and while he was living in Mobile, Alabama, as a token of her affection, Queenie gave Dixon a $20 gold coin. And when he left for war in the fall of 1861, during the Battle of Shiloh, Dixon was shot, and the bullet struck the coin in his trouser pockets, absorbing the impact rather than the bullet going through his leg, and it actually saved him. And of course, down through the years, that story was told over and over again. But you know, a lot of legends are hard to prove until the Hunley was discovered and brought to the surface, and they actually found this coin laying next to Dixon's bones. So proof that the legend was real. And it even gets more proof that it wasn't just a bent coin, that the forensic scientists examined Dixon's body, and they found that in his femur, near his hip bone, he had been injured, and they found traces from lead there. Also found on Dixon's body was a gold ring and a brooch. And no one knows exactly why he had those and why he carried them, perhaps for good luck. Perhaps after the war, he had planned to perhaps propose to the young Miss Bennett. Now, that's part of the legend. We really don't know. That was something that Dixon took to the watery grave with him himself. This is a diagram of actually, if you were in the Hunley, how big it really was. It was 48 inches from top to bottom and only 42 from side to side. So, as you can see, the person inside was not a lot of room to move around. There was a crew member that was 5'10" and one that was 6'1", where the shortest was 5'5". That was a lot of big men inside of that small sub. Here rest the 3 crews who died serving on the Hunley. During the first sinking, 5 crew members died. And during a practice dive in the Charleston Harbor on October the 15th, 1863, 8 more died. The third and final crew died February the 17th, 1864, and remained in the Charleston Harbor for many years. And then on April 17th, 2004, they were buried here in Magnolia Cemetery. And I actually had the honor of participating in that funeral of these 8 sailors. Okay, guys, I want to thank you for joining me here today to the H.L. Hunley Museum. I was just informed that this is the 20th anniversary today. 20 years ago today, I was here for the grand opening. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to go down below. Give me a big old thumbs up. Be sure to tell your family and friends and share on your social media. And until next time, y'all have a good day.